To make the lives of animators and technical directors easier in 3ds Max 7, we've created a tool called Parameter Collector. To show this off, we've got a character created by Dreamscape Imagery for the movie Kingdom and Twilight, which was co-produced by Volker Engel and Mark Weigert of Uncharted Territory. Now, to understand the point of a parameter collector, you need to understand the typical workflow of an animation system. So for instance, if I'm working with this character and doing some animation, I'm typically going to pick on the head object, go to the morph modifier and pin that down so it's always available on my stack. And you can see I can adjust my morph controls. But I'm also going to be going around and animating different objects on the character. For instance, the head bone's rotation to control where the head is looking. I may be going in and adjusting the controls for the different fins on the character. So you can see I have a number of different controls for those. Now all of this is scattered all over the environment, and I have to go to different parts of the interface to deal with them. So it would be nice if you had one interface that could deal with all of that. So to do this, what we did was we created the parameter collector. So if I pop that up, and we'll work with just a blank parameter collector for now. So let's just call this blank. And what I want to do is add some parameters. So to start off simply, let's just grab those two objects there, and I can actually go into my mini trackbar, and you can see that it's automatically selected the X, Y, and Z rotation for both objects. I can just right click and say collect the parameters. So I get all of those parameters now in my parameter collector. And of course, at this point now I can grab them and adjust them. Now if I need to, I can go in and start to rename these. So for instance, right click here and say this is going to be the X rotation top fin. And I can also put in a URL if I want this to go to, for instance, an internal website that has descriptions for the character and how it's rigged. I can also have little notes for this particular slider that says what it does. So I can just set that in there. So now you can name all of your different sliders with names that aren't necessarily corresponding to the actual object names. Now on top of this, you may want to reorganize things. So for instance, because these are all rotations for two different objects, I may want to put them in separate rollouts. So we'll take all these rotations and simply go into rollout and say new rollout selected parameters, and it's automatically popped them in there. And then for the old parameters that is left behind, I can just go to edit and say delete selected, and they're gone. I can also rename the rollouts as well. And now for animation, as you saw before, I can quickly grab a spinner and just animate them. I can also grab multiple spinners and say multi-edit, and now when I go and grab them, it actually uses all the different animation controls all at the same time. So I can do that very easily. If I need to reorder things, I can pick on any given item, say this one here, and I can just move it up. So it moves up into the system, move it down. I can also, of course, drag and reorient all of my different rollouts. On top of this, I can go into any one of these, right-click on the field. I can select the objects that that is based on. I can copy that animation to paste it later. I can also go in and show this in the track view. So for instance, just go show track view, and that particular slider is now popped up my track view to adjust the F-curves. Now, right now you're seeing a fairly small number of parameters in here, but I've gone much further. We've actually got a number of different collections, and I can have an unlimited number of those in my scene. And so for instance, let's take something that's got a lot of stuff on it, fins and morphs. So this is all the different morphs and fin controls for this character. And you can see I've got my snarl morphs all down the side here. I've got all the morphs for my jowl as well, and then I've got different rotations for my different fins. Now the beauty of this is once everything's in one collector, or one set of collectors that I can pop back and forth, I can actually make the rest of the Max UI go away and now work just with this. And of course it's expandable and controllable, so I can add as many of these to this one interface as possible and go through and start to adjust my settings. If I don't want to work with fins and morphs, but instead I want to work with the ear fins, I just pick on the ear fins control. If I want to work with the back fin and top controls, I flick on those. Now the beauty of all of this is once you've created it all, you can also go in and actually put this collection to the object or link it to an object. Once you've done that, it's stored in the object, so every time you merge this character into a new environment, all of these controls will come with it, and you merely say get from object and it pulls up those collectors. So it's a very quick way of working with characters in a pipeline. Now I don't want you to think that this is only useful for characters. This is an extremely powerful tool anytime you're going to have a lot of different items spread around the UI that you're using. Another example of this is this architectural visualization by Urban Simulations. In this particular case, I've got no lighting set up in the scene. So what I want to do is actually go and load my lighting from another file. Now this is a not uncommon workflow to actually go and create multiple lighting rigs for your different environments. For instance, if I do a lot of different outdoor lighting for design visualization, I may have 2 or 3 different outdoor light rigs set up to adjust for different types of setups that I might want. This way I don't have to go and rebuild these light rigs every single time I set up a new scene. So in this case, let's just go in and hit File Merge. I'm going to grab my light rig, and here are the objects involved in it. So they're all dropped into the scene now, and I can shuttle around. Now, in order to adjust this, I could go to every individual light and tweak the settings, which is fine if I'm intimately familiar with what each part of the light rig does. However, if I'm working in a team, I may have multiple people loading up these light rigs that aren't actually familiar with every detail of them. So in order to make life a lot easier, what I can do is go in and load a collection. So I have the parameter collector open. You can see that we have no collections at the moment. I can go into collection, however, say get from object. It's noticed that the holder that I loaded in with all of my objects has a collection on it, so I'm just going to say pick, and now I have all the collection parameters for that particular light rig. This is everything I thought was particularly important to work with on the rig. So for instance, sky color, multiplier for the strength of light coming out of the sky. I have controls like orientation for the sun. Can also control the height of the sun. Things like color, strength, all of these settings that the average user is going to need to adjust when they pull a light rig into a scene. It's all there. So again, just a quick look at what you can do with custom attributes. This is not a tool that's specifically designed for characters. This tool is useful for absolutely everything.